Hey, what's up guys? Bucky here. Just wanted to check in. A little bit late night over here in Canada. It's about 12 a.m. But I wanted to bring this up because I've been working all day. I'm actually just getting done. I'm actually got maybe about another hour of work here. But one of the things that comes up for me is this idea of gifts and talents. You know, it's been a pleasure and a blessing to be in my work and to realize that there's so many of us that have gifts and talents. And one of my biggest passions is about supporting people to discover what that is for them. It's so often that we are sitting on our gifts and talents and then we just can't see them. One of the initial exercises that I do with the people that I work with is to have them do this timeline exercise where they look at their life and they look at all the things that they've done in their life and they look at all the different values and all the different watermarks, all the different significant moments in their lives. And then they look at all the different curriculums, all the different teachings, all the different degrees, all the different credentials, all the different things that they've been involved with for their entire lives. And from that, we can discover what their gifts and talents are. I think, you know, the other piece of that is just getting really close. What's up, Diego? How are you? We were just having this conversation earlier, so please comment on what you think about this. You know, we all have gifts and talents, and one of the greatest opportunities in life is to really ask ourselves that question of what our gifts and talents are and having the willingness and the courage to follow through on them. I mean, because that's the second part, right? I think there's a lot of us that have an understanding of what we're blessed in and what we're gifted in and what is there for us to do. And not all of us are willing to do what it takes. Hey, Madhu, how are you? Hey, Max, what's going on, man? This willingness to follow through on our heart's calling, this willingness to be who we are, this willingness to be expressed, fully exposed, fully vulnerable, fully honest in all of who we are, right? And to accept that and to not hide behind the paradigms of who we think we need to be and what we think is right and what we think is valuable and how we think we're going to get love. I think about my story as a younger person, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, and I talked about this idea of constantly compromising myself, constantly pretending to be somebody that I wasn't because I felt like if I did that, then I would receive love. And, you know, when I think about my high school career and even my college career, and even now, like, I still have that tendency. I still have that tendency in different moments, different areas, the different intricacies of who I am, to hide myself and to not be fully vulnerable and not to be fully honest. And I have that tendency, and it's something that I have to look at every single day. It's something that I have to invite into a conversation. It's something that I have to get clear in order for me to be my best self, for me to be the fullest expression of myself. It was interesting because earlier this year, one of the things that I talked about was this decision that I've made. And my decision for this year is to be all of who I am, to live 100% and to live in that authenticity, and not to settle for 60%, 40%, 80% in any area of my life, but to live at 100%. And let me tell you, you know, and I kind of alluded to this last night in last night's post, is that is not an easy thing to take on. It's not an easy thing to take on because there's so many things that we've built around ourselves. There's so many structures and so many safety nets. And I was having a conversation this morning with a client, and I was talking about this idea of safety and how we build this security in the identity and comfort in the identity of who we pretend to be. You know, and as we discover who we are and what there is for us to do, and we awaken to that, you know, we still want to hold on to that old identity of like, oh man, but this feels so safe and it feels so comfortable and it's so easy for me just to work this 9 to 5, and you know, if I can just live this okay lifestyle and make my $100,000 or make my $150,000 or make my $75,000, and I'll have the white picket fence and I'll have the perfect family, and you know, I'll be doing pretty good and I'll have some good relationships. And I did that for a while. And I think we all do that for a while. We all live the life that we think we're supposed to live. And one of my greatest discoveries from 2018 or 2017 was this reflection on, you know, my perfect life is never how I planned it to be. My perfect life really started to happen when I started to push the envelope, when I started to think outside of myself, when I started to lean into this possibility of what my heart really wants, when I started to be inspired and create inspired action in my life, when I started to listen to my intuition and listen to my heart and say, you know what, this is what there is for me to do. And yes, it doesn't make sense. And yes, it's maybe outside of the plan, but I know that this is right. And I think we all have moments like that. I think we all have moments where we have an opportunity to choose the right thing. And again, I spoke about this last night. I spoke about the congruency that we all need as leaders in the world. And this is a message to leaders, and this was maybe a follow-up from last night as things still settle in my heart to speak. This is a follow-up. We need leaders in this world. You know, this world is lacking leadership, and we're in an age where everybody is awakening. There's a shift that's taking place, and that vibration inside of us and that communication inside of us is becoming louder and louder and louder and louder. And there's going to be a time in your life where you realize that you can't do anything else. Because when I do anything else, my life doesn't work. Right? And that was the biggest discovery for me, is my life only works when I'm living from who I am. And everything else is a battle. Everything else is upstream. Everything else is out of flow. Diego saying, it's perfectly fine to live that life. So when you know yourself in the real life, your deep desires and your gift are materialized, and you know the difference. Yeah, totally. And I was talking to Diego tonight because Diego is one of these people. Diego is one of these leaders. Madhu, you're one of these people as well. You know, you're one of these leaders, and we all lead in different ways. You know, and that's the cool part about being human, and that's the cool part about, you know, understanding our passions and our purpose and what there is for us to do, is that we're never going to be like anybody else. Right? Yes, and there's models and there's things that we can look at, and only we can do what there is for us to do. And that's why it's so important that we do it. You know, so going back into that timeline exercise, it becomes a really profound experience. It becomes a really profound experience to be able to see, you know, what is right inside of me? What have I been conditioned for my entire life? And if I take on this idea that life is working for me, right, and not happening to me, then what has life been working in me to create? What has life been preparing me for so that I can contribute and serve in others? And how can I take on all the different challenges, all the different struggles, all the different successes as an invitation to step into that work with even more depth? Right? And I think when people are looking to develop their content and curriculum, or their message, or their purpose, or their passion, or their six-figure business, or whatever it is, right? When people are trying to figure out who am I supposed to be in the world and how I'm supposed to show up, it's oftentimes that they start to reach outside of themselves. And they say, ooh, look at that over there. That's really cool. I like that. Or they say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll do what that person does because that seems pretty cool. That person seems like they're getting a lot of love. And it's a trap. The trap is to look outside of yourself for what you're meant to be, and the way to alleviate that is just to look within. What have I done in my life? What comes up for me in these different moments? How can I just start to trust my intuition and be who I am? And I think, you know, again, it's one of that timeless question of who am I, and what is there for me to do? And it's such an amazing opportunity that we have being human beings. You know, there's that Gary Vee quote where he's talking about, you know, some type of trillion%, you know, you're 1 in a trillion or something like that in order to be alive. Now, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? You know, it's an absolute miracle to be a human being. And the odds of that existence is something that is an absolute miracle. Now, what are you going to do with it? You know, again, part of my biggest passion and purpose is about shifting the consciousness of the planet. And there's things that I do directly in the work that I'm passionate about. There's things that I coach. There's workshops that I lead, and so on and so forth. But I think more importantly, what I realized very early on is that I have a very specific skill set to understand people's gifts and talents, and understand how they can create the most impact in the shortest amount of time, and understand what it takes for them to get really aligned with who they are. And I realized that if I can impact influencers, that I can have much wider reach and much wider impact. And it's not about the praise, it's not about the acknowledgement, it's about the impact. And for me, the most important thing in life is impact. It's people living in their truth. It's people being touched in their heart. It's people being moved into who they are. It's people realizing that they have a choice, realizing that they have options, realize that there's an opportunity for them to do exactly what they want to do, and have the relationships, and have the money, and have the family, everything. That everything is a possibility when you start to look at your choices and realize what is truth. You know, and a big part of that is like, what is your practice? What brings you into that? What brings you into that space? And when do you allow yourself to be who you are? When do you allow yourself to sink into that? We're all so busy. or we're all so distracted. You know, this idea of, you know, needing to chase a buck or having to pay the bills or needing to take care of the kids or, you know, watching TV. You know, I think about just this idea of watching TV or being distracted by the news or being distracted by sports. And we're all in this process of getting closer to who we are. And my invitation for you, if you're watching this right now, is to be in that space of how can I start living in my gifts and talents right away? You know, and there's nothing worse, right? There's nothing worse than knowing what you're meant to do and not doing it. There's nothing worse than chasing a dream that you thought was uniquely yours and then achieving it and realizing that that's not it at all. You know, and most times it's not about a full life transformation. Most times you don't have to throw up everything up in the air and say, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to change everything in my life. Most times it's about a shift. It's about a subtle shift. It's about a shift in focus. It's about a shift in perspective. It's about a shift in the way that you show up and how you participate in the things that you're already doing. And sometimes it takes big shifts. Sometimes it does. But I think in a lot of people, you know, the question to begin with is, how can I start that subtle shift? How can I be focused on shifting exactly where I'm at and start building for the future? Because here's the thing, right? People overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I was having this conversation with Diego tonight, and he was talking about, you know, I'm making 7 years plans, I'm making 8-year plans, I'm making 10-year plans. What are your 7-year plans? What are your 8-year plans? What are your 10-year plans? No matter where you're at right now, people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade. So no matter where you're at, whether that's, you know, the far proximity from who you actually are or right in alignment, what is your decade plan? What is the work that you're looking to create, and how can you start to make a difference right now? I think for all of us leaders, you know, that idea or that phrase, you know, of making a difference, contributing to the whole through being ourselves, is something that's really important to us. You know, and it can happen in the subtle days, but how do you make your life about that? How do you create your life and design your life to be about that, but not to be a compromise? Not that you go work for a nonprofit. Nothing wrong with nonprofit, but how do you have it all? How do you have it all? Because why not? Why not? Who are you not deserving? Are you not deserving enough to have it all? I believe that we all are. I believe that we can use our minds, use our hearts, use our brains to step into the opportunity of having it all. So my invitation for you is just to check in with that and to ask yourself, am I living authentically through who I am? And are there things for me to do that I'm not doing? Wishing you guys lots of love. We'll see you next time. Peace.